What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode here, the Side Guys Football Forum. I'm one of your co-hosts from the side, joined as always by my good friend, my good buddy, the other half of the Side Guys, Mr. Tad the Side. And Tad, it's been a while for us. We took a little bit of I wouldn't say it was a break, but, a longer pause, I would say. We did our draft live stream 2 weekends ago, which took a lot out of us. Yeah. We had our special May the 4th episode, doing a little bit of a crossover between Star Wars and the NFL draft. So we only had one episode last week. And so now we're back to this episode here today. And yeah, it's been a bit of some time between all these episodes, to give our voices a break. I think that was the big one after that.
That was a big, especially with with 8 straight hours of talking. You need about per hour 1 day to recover voice wise, especially if you're one of us has a professional, teaching that requires you to talk even more the next day. So no, I mean, it was a bit of a break, but well earned, and we're right back in it, and we're gonna now, instead of previewing and predicting the draft, we're gonna react to it. So I'm very excited. The draft era or draft transition, sorry, Cap's right next to me, he's kind of distracting me. It's not over. We're gonna be filling you guys in on all your favorite teams, and by the way, we have some stuff on social media coming out along with this episode, so stay tuned for that announcement.
100%. So yeah, in today's episode, we're gonna go back and look at some of the draft classes that some that I think benefited from the draft class, and you could call them quote unquote winners, and then some that maybe they probably didn't have the strongest draft class. Maybe you're questioning some of the picks, so we're going to call them quote unquote losers based on the draft. So we each got one of each, and so yeah, we want to go through all of these draft classes here. First note, I think we have to address this first, is that Eagles were clear winners. So neither of us are going to talk about the Eagles.
People are
and how
so
amazing they were.
Apparently, like the other NFL GMs, people are getting very sick of hearing how well the Eagles did. So yes, they got an A++. Yes, they are winners. We both acknowledge it. That's boring. Everybody that's been beaten to death at this point. It's only 2 weeks after the draft. So we're going to hit on some of the winners that have gone a little bit more under the radar.
Exactly. Teams that are not as, celebrated to having a successful draft class this year compared to the Eagles, who have just been talked about incessantly across all media channels for sure, both on mainstream as well as other people's podcasts as well. So we're not going to talk about the Eagles. They hit a home run. Let's see if it actually plays out for them the way that they want all these players to play out for them. So, but yeah, we're going to touch on some other teams first. So Tad, do you want to start with winners or losers first? Like, what do you think would be more fun?
Let's start with the positive. Let's start this episode out on a good note. Let's go with the winners. So the reason I use under the radar as a term is because that's kind of what I was, the guideline I was going under to find my winner. And I was actually shocked when I looked at this team's draft in its entirety. I was like, man, this was a good draft. I feel like very few people are talking about this. And before these fans go, everybody's talking about it. I mean, outside of your bubble. I mean, as the NFL as a whole. The Minnesota Vikings, I thought, had a fantastic draft. I was really impressed with this. And, just to give a real quick rundown. So in the first round, they got Jordan Addison, the receiver at USC. The third round, they got Mekhi Blackman, the corner at USC. Fourth round, Jay Ward, the LSU safety. Fifth round, Jacqueline Roy, the defensive tackle out of LSU. They really like drafting from the same schools, apparently.
Yeah.
Fifth round was Jaron Hall, the quarterback at BYU. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on that, Mer. And then finally in the 7th round, and I will definitely get to this because this is probably a top 5 pick of the draft, in my opinion. They got Dwayne McBride, the running back at UAB, who's been a long time sleeper of mine. So I thought that was a great pick. I'll get to that in a bit. I'll kick it off with obviously the first round pick. Is I remember when we were doing our NFL draft live cast, which, by the way, if you missed it for our live reactions, go back and watch it. It's still on the LAFB network YouTube channel. I think it was somewhere around the 10th pick, or one of our YouTube commenters asked us, who's the first USC player off the board? And you and I both agreed it's Jordan Addison. And then we were like, well, where would we want him to go? And you and I also both agreed it was a very rare occasion where where we both said Minnesota. And then about 13 picks later, it was Minnesota. So I think that the reason this was such a great fit is because Adam Thielen's obviously moved on. KJ Osborne, well, good. There are doubts as to whether he could be a true number 2. I think number 3 is where he fits in really, well. And then I decided looking at the stats a little bit more. Mert, guess the last time the Vikings had a receiver go for over 1,000 yards without the last name Jefferson.
I'm going to say it's when Stephon Diggs was on the team.
2018. Do you know why?
Because Stephon Diggs is on the team.
Well, that and also Justin Jefferson was still in college at that point.
Exactly, yeah.
Do you want to know the last time the Vikings had 2 receivers go over 1,000 yards receiving in the same season? The last time that happened.
Wow, okay. Part of me wants to say it's the Brett Favre era, so I think Sidney Rice and Percy Harvin.
I don't have the answer because I got all the way to 2004. 2004, and I was like, this is pointless. I'm going to stop looking. So,
wow. Okay.
So to my knowledge, this century, they have not had 2 receivers in the same season go for over 1,000 yards. So I think this might finally be the draft pick to break that because they finally have a stable quarterback situation. They finally have a actual functional offense when everybody's healthy. So Jordan Addison getting arguably, and I know some people would disagree with this, but getting arguably the top receiver in the first round in the 20s, you sat there, you're patient, and I think it worked out pretty well for the Vikings.
100%. And I mean, Tad, we talked about this when he was actually selected by Minnesota too. That's just like, we talked about KJ Osborne and that how he stepped up pretty well as the number 3 option behind Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson last season. But I think you can see some glimmer that he possibly could do better with the increased role. But I think you honestly can also see that's like as the number 3 option in that offense too. I think he succeeded pretty well there. So now you had a guy like Jordan Addison that you can sort of put him in the slot. You can put him on the outside. You can use him as the number 2 position. You can use him at the number 3 position, whatever you want to do. You sort of have 3, obviously you have Justin Jefferson. You have 3 now very viable options in the receiving room that you can sort of utilize whatever sort of passing offense that Kevin O'Connell wants to implement there in Minnesota. And I mean, you obviously throw in TJ Hawkinson. I mean, just automatically that passing offense has just gotten a lot more dangerous. And if KJ Osborne can take that leap, then great. You put him on the outside. You have an excellent slot receiver, Jordan Addison. But if Casey can't, Jordan Addison can also play on the outside too. So, I mean, he's just going to be an excellent complementary piece to Justin Jefferson in this offense. I mean, we talked about this on the draft live stream as well. Just he's going to take some pressure off of Justin Jefferson, which will make Justin Jefferson that much more dangerous. Mm-hmm. And like I said,
as if he needed to be more dangerous.
Seriously, yeah. It's like, and like I said, Jordan Addison on his own is a pretty dangerous piece as well. So, I mean, he's going to get a lot of attention too. So, I mean, just excellent pick by Minnesota in the first round. Like, I mean, there's no other easier way to put it.
I mean, they were already like on my winners list just after that one pick. But, let's go their next 2 picks. Their next pick going from Trojan to Trojan was Mekhi Blackmon in the 3rd round. Their pick after that was Jay Ward, the safety out of LSU. I scouted both of these guys for the Senior Bowl. I was given the defensive backs, and I got lazy, and I just copy and pasted my notes. Mekhi Blackmon, I really like his, man-to-man skills. He has great speed, and the one hang-up I had on him is unfortunately, I did not update this for the Combine. That was my bad, but at least the school at the Senior Bowl, he came in at 5'11", 180 pounds. Not really number 1 corner measurables, but at the end of the 3rd round, you're not really looking for number 1 corner. Like if he turns out to be that, great. If he turns out to be exactly what I expect him to be, which is a prime nickel slot corner, then that's a pretty good, haul for a 3rd round pick at that point. So I really like that pick. Jay Ward, and this is why I brought up that these are my notes from January. My very first note on Jay Ward was this could be the mid-round steal of the draft. I love Jay Ward. Right. His nose for the football is absolutely crazy. He does tend to bite on double moves a little too badly. His footwork his technique needs a little bit of work, but his man coverage abilities for a safety, his speed, and it's just like I said, he's just a ball hawk. He just is somehow all around the field. He and Daniel Scott were the 2 safeties in this year's draft where I was like, oh, these guys can cover everything. I was like, can they do it well? That's a bit of a question mark, but they had the ability to be everywhere all at once, which is obviously a great skill you can have as safety. So I think that the Vikings did a very, very good job shoring up that secondary, and potentially with Harrison Smith getting in his mid-30s now, they just potentially drafted his successor in Jay Ward. So look out for that in a couple years. Jacqueline Roy, not much to say on him, the defensive tackle at LSU. He has some physical promise. Problem is he's a little slow off the snap, and he just he needs a lot of work in terms of refining his game. But I don't know, for a 5th-round pick, and when you are super, super thin at defensive tackle like the Vikings were, I thought that was a very, very solid, area to take him, especially because I don't know about your rankings, Mer. He went basically exactly where I had him in my defensive tackle rankings, where he was either the 8th or 9th one off the board, and he was in the bottom 3 of my top 10. So it was definitely a talent and good area to get him. Intriguing pick in Jaren Hall. I thought this was interesting. Now, I wasn't the biggest fan of his. I'm still not. I think he tends to force too many throws. He tends to get a little too panicky, too easy. He's a little undersized at 6 foot. But there in the 6th round, I'm okay with that. There's enough promise there to convince me he can be a solid backup. And you know what? If it lights a little bit of fire under Cousins' ass, just be like, oh, hey, now we got a young guy in here trying to, steal my job. There's potential there. And I know they have the A&M guy. Why am I blanking on his name?
Kellen Mond.
Thank you. So now they got 2 young quarterbacks kind of nipping at Kirk Cousins' heels. So
let's be honest with you, Kellen Mond is not inspiring any sort of confidence to replace Kirk Cousins, though.
Well, this is a real quick, side tangent, but did you see the news about the Titans that dropped today?
Yes, that's going to be very interesting if that actually ends up transpiring. And so the news that Tad is sort of referring to is that there's a possibility that Malik Willis, the 3rd-round pick of the Tennessee Titans from last year's draft, has a risk of possibly not making the final roster for the Titans as we head into the 2023 season.
And I went to bat for that motherfucker. Damn
it. So that's going to be very interesting to see if they do end up releasing him and he catches on with another team. Like maybe it was just a team fit. And like I said, they moved on. They drafted Will Levis. And so I think they're thinking he's going to be the future now instead of Ryan Tannehill is obviously getting up there in years. So yeah, if they do end up releasing Malik Willis and he lands with another team, like, watch out. I still think he's got a lot of problems. I don't think he was given a fair enough time. Like, I mean, when he was drafted, sorry, we're sort of going a different direction. I really just want to speak on Malik Willis just a little bit here. It's just that when he was drafted, we talked about him like, you see all the gifts that he has, but we also knew that he's going to need a little bit of work when he gets to the NFL. And for him to start in his rookie season with that Titans team that was struggling already, they did have a lot of weapons for him to throw to. I know Derrick Henry was sort of in and out of the lineup dealing with some injuries too. So, I mean, it's just like, how much can you rely on him being successful then? And so I think if he lands another team clearly as a backup to eventually groom to be a starter, then I think he still has a shot in the NFL. But just, I'm surprised that honestly, Tennessee is giving up on him so quickly.
Yeah, so am I. But the point being is there's a quarterback battle in Tennessee with a young quarterback. There's a quarterback battle in Minnesota now for the backup spot as well. So, because like you said, Kellen Mond has shown flashes, but nothing really super promising. So that'll be interesting. Now, this, like I said before, was probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite pick of the NFL draft. It was the 7th-round selection, DeWayne McBride, the running back at UAB. This guy's absolute freak. He averaged 7 yards a carry last season at UAB. He has the speed. He has the physicality to succeed at the next level. He has the field vision. I think if you take UAB out of, his little nameplate and slap Alabama on there, he would have gone 2-3 rounds earlier. I really do believe that. So I think that with Dalvin Cook both being oft injured, so you need just depth at the position anyways. And also, let's not forget, those Dalvin Cook trade rumors are not going away. And that seems to be a pretty mutually agreed upon thing where he wants out and the Vikings don't really want to pay him. So I do see a Dalvin Cook trade happening sometime in the future. I don't think it will be before the season starts, but I do think there's a possibility where, yet again, you and I are recording an episode at 11 p.m. on a Thursday in November, and all of a sudden the score alert comes across that Dalvin Cook just got traded in. So help me God, if it's the 49ers, so we have to go live again, I will kill someone. But ultimately, I do think Dalvin Cook will be off this roster before the end of the next season. So now you have Alexander Madison and DeWayne McBride. And honestly, this is what a big believer I am in McBride. It would not surprise me if he took over for Madison. Not saying Madison's bad, but I think that McBride has a very similar skill set and is younger and just has that more excitement, factor for the coaches. So I really think that this is going to be one of those 7th round picks we look back at 2-3 years from now and be like, yeah, no, that was a good pick. That was a good pick. So I like I said, overall, I give the Vikings the absolute A draft. If you didn't nail a pick, at least you didn't totally screw it up either. So I understood their draft strategy. I think they utilized it very well, and they got some really good, promising young prospects, especially in those middle rounds.
Yeah, I do like the promise that McBride brings in the 7th round. I think both of us had him ranked somewhere in the 5 or 6 range as far as our top 10 rankings are concerned. And he definitely has this.
Third.
Was he your third?
I
Was he that
so.
high?
Wow.
Okay. I think for me, he was number 5, if I remember correctly. It could have been 6, but just like we both saw this guy as a highly ranked running back. And the fact that he slips all the way to the 7th, Minnesota's getting excellent value there. Now, we will see exactly how it's going to play in with Alexander Mattison, because like you said, they have a very similar skill set. So you wonder just exactly, are they going to leverage Mattison more because he's been in the system longer, or are they going to go with the fresher, younger legs and Dwayne McBride sort of thing? It's like, I think Alexander Mattison only signed a 1-year deal with Minnesota. So clearly it's like, maybe they're looking for that younger, cheaper option who's got, a handful of years under a rookie contract, right? So maybe they're looking at that more than, as far as paying Alexander Mattison. Obviously, you already talked about Dalvin Cook and how they don't want to pay him and all the trade rumors circulating there. So yeah, him in the 7th round is excellent value. We already talked about all the other great picks they had. So yeah, Minnesota got a really great draft class this year. Let's see if it all pans out for them. And really quick, Tad, I looked it up for you. I kind of had to make sure I could find the answer. It was back in 2000 when the Minnesota Vikings had 2 1,000-yard receivers. I think it's pretty obvious to see.
Moss and Carter? Was Carter still playing in 2000?
It was Chris Carter, and of course the other one was
Moss.
Yeah, of course, Randy Moss. Yeah. Now, can you guess how many
yards
Carter
they both had? I'm going to say Moss had 1,500, Carter had 1,200.
You're pretty close. So Moss had 1,437 and Chris Carter had 1,274. So yeah, not bad. You're pretty close there. But yeah, back in 2000. So yeah, I wanted to say Moss and Carter.
22 years. I was 6 years old the last time the Vikings had a competent passing offense. I was 6 years old.
Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy. So like I said, I wanted to say Boston Carter, but just part of me thought that with Brett Favre, he was airing it out more. Sidney Rice became a viable fantasy option, and then obviously they were leveraging Percy Harvin a lot too. So I was like, maybe they got it. But yeah, clearly you didn't even have the answer. So
Harvin kept finishing. So Sidney Rice had a couple of years where he finished at like 1,000. Harvin kept finishing at like 700, 800. Like he was close, but he was never quite there.
Because they did use him in the running game, too. I think that's the big thing, too.
Exactly. Also, in terms of where McBride landed on our list, you had him ranked as number 8.
Number 8? Okay, wow. A lot lower.
Running back. Okay. I know. I thought you were a little brutal on that. I remember seeing your rankings at the time. You're like, damn, dude. And he was number 4 for me.
Number 4 for you. Okay. All right.
By the way, we both got the top 3 running backs correct in order of where they were drafted.
Solid. There we go. All right, so I'm going to get to my winner here, Tad, and you might be a fan of this one because it's the Indianapolis Colts. I thought they had a pretty successful draft. You look at where they went, they had a lot of picks. I think that's another reason why I like that they had a pretty good draft this year, too, because they have a lot of holes to fill, and they were able to sort of, very much like we talked about this with the Rams, just sort of take as many throws at the dartboard as you can and see what can work out for you, right? So I think that's exactly what the Colts sort of need to do on both sides of the ball to sort of improve on both sides. And so it's like really quickly, I'm going to go through all 12 picks. I'll try to go as fast as I can because there's a lot of them here. So you start at round 1, pick 4. You got Anthony Richardson, quarterback out of Florida. You get to round 2, pick 44. Julius Brents, the cornerback out of Kansas State. Round 3, pick 79. You got Josh Downs, a wide receiver out of North Carolina. Round 4, pick 106. You got Blake Freeland, offensive tackle out of BYU. Round 4 again, you got pick 110. You got Addison out of Boire, the defensive tackle out of Northwestern. Round 5, pick 138. You got Darius Rush, the cornerback out of South Carolina. Round 5, a guy you brought up already, pick 158. Daniel Scott, the safety out of Cal. Round 5 again, you got pick 162. Will Mallory, the tight end out of the University of Miami. Round 5, pick 176. You got Evan Hull, the running back out of Northwestern. Round 6, pick 211. You got Titus Leo, the outside linebacker out of Wagner College. Round 7, you got pick 221. Jalen Jones, the cornerback out of Texas A&M. Then you close it out with your 12th pick in the draft there. Round 7, pick 236. Jake Witt, the offensive tackle out of Northern Michigan. So, like I said, a lot of picks there. You're sort of varying the positions. You got some offensive tackle. You got some defensive players. You got some running backs. You got a good mix there. Obviously, you got to start at the top with the quarterback, Anthony Richardson. I know you were not too happy with the selection of Anthony Richardson.
Misa Jar Jar Binks.
But I think, like I said, out of the two options that you had, obviously after Bryce Young and CJ Stroud were both taken, I think Anthony Richardson was, okay, maybe in your words, I'm going to put it here, the lesser of two evils. Like, I mean, I think I see more potential with Anthony Richardson fitting in the Indianapolis Colts offense because, like I said, I brought this up during the live stream as well, that head coach Shane Steichen is coming over from the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, here's the offensive coordinator there. He led to Jalen Hurts having the successful season that he had, taking the Eagles all the way to the Super Bowl by leveraging both his passing ability and, more importantly, the running ability, which made him so dangerous for a lot of opposing defenses to worry about. Now you have a guy in Anthony Richardson who brings a very similar skill set to the quarterback position that Shane Steichen can sort of leverage as far as like using that throwing ability and, more importantly, using that running ability too. Now, yes, he is not a complete prospect by any means. He needs some work. But I think as a rookie, he's going to go through the growing pains. We saw this with Peyton Manning. We saw this with Andrew Luck. That's like, there's going to be some struggles early on. Okay, yes, I'm not saying he's at the same level as both those guys. You gave me the look. You gave the look. But I'm just saying that's like when you take a quarterback that high, you have to play him right away, right? So, of course, he's going to play right away. I think that's the clear thing. And so that's why I'm being where it's just like you're going to see the struggles early on. But hopefully just Shane Steichen will be able to leverage his offense around him so that those, the struggles that you'll see, sort of like, the misreads, the not reading the right defense, like all those things will happen. But hopefully as the season progresses, he will start to get better at it, right? I think that's obviously the hope that you have with the Colts there. So I really like him there for the Colts there, especially, like I said, compared to Will Levis. I think he's a way better fit compared to Will Levis. So, I mean, I got good hope for him. I think he's going to eventually find his footing and be a successful quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. I'm not saying he's going to be a franchise-altering type of player. We have to obviously wait and see about that. But I think you're a little bit more pessimistic about him than I am. And so I'll give you a chance to speak about your number one overall pick. Not number one, first-round pick here, but number 4 overall.
I think at this point, the listeners, if you follow us closely and listen to every pod and live stream and everything, or really even just one, you already know my general thoughts. Now I'm trying to be more positive. Part of the reason we took a break was because my blood pressure was getting a little too high, according to my doctor, and I needed to calm down. So now I'm doing that thing where I'm trying to talk myself into it. I'm trying because I want to be that guy that's just like every time Anthony Richardson throws a pick for my own team, I'm sitting there like, I told you so. I told you so. I don't want to be that guy.
Don't be that
Nobody
guy.
likes that guy. So exactly. So I'm trying to be like, all right, let's give him a shot. Exactly like what you said. The Jalen Hurts connection in terms of talents wise. I see it. I understand why the Colts made this pick. Now, it doesn't help that Stephen Holder, who is a Colts beat reporter, tweeted out during Colts rookie minicamp. He goes, Anthony Richardson had some really good throws. He missed quite a few as well. And I was like, God damn it. I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. And so it began. So I'm really trying. I promise, Anthony Richardson, if you listen to this podcast, which you probably don't, I'm trying to be positive. I'll be more positive. I'm hoping the best for you, but man, it's also funny too, because when people ask me, like, oh, what do you think the Richardson pick? I literally had a guy in the elevator in my apartment the other day. I was wearing a Colts shirt, and he was like, what do you think of Richardson? I was like, and he and every other person that asked me that question has the exact same follow-up question. Well, it's not like you wanted Levis. It's not like Levis is any better. I'm not saying I wanted Levis. I'm saying like I didn't want either of them. Like you said, it was lesser of two evils. Like I wish we would have gone Skoronski. I wish we would have gone Christian Gonzalez, which seems weird because of his slip, but still, I consider him and still do a top 10 talent. It's just like you said. I don't even if he does work out, is he gonna be franchise changing? Like in my mind, worst case scenario is he's mediocre. And like we're stuck with him for the next 2 to 3 years. Even worse case scenario is he's Kyler Murray, where he's good enough where we gotta stick with him and we fall in the trap of paying him, and then we're the Cardinals, where we're just stuck, and no coach ever wants to come to us because we're paying our quarterback $30 million a year, who's not worth it. So I don't know. It's a pick that carries a ton of risk with it, and I'm not hoping for it. I'm just saying I think if he is not a franchise changing player, the next best thing is if he full on busts. So that way we can just cut ties a year or two down the road and like just move on. So I'm hoping that it's not the case. I'm hoping we got our next franchise quarterback. Number 5 looks damn good on him, but I don't know. This is why I didn't want us to take him, because it's just like I need to say that for the next 4 months. Like I'm really hoping for the best here. I'm sorry, Germany.
Yeah, in case you saw any of the schedule leaks here, as of recording, it's Wednesday, so we haven't seen the schedule released just yet, but it has been confirmed that the Colts are going to Germany. So, I mean, that's going to be interesting to see them play the New England Patriots. I mean, yeah, that's going to be very interesting.
A classic American rivalry played in Germany.
Exactly.
Way to go,
but
NFL.
Let's get to the rest of the picks, because honestly, Tad, I know you were not as happy with the Richardson pick, but you were actually very happy with the rest of their picks. And we're not going to get into all of them, but I did want to touch on a good portion.
Real quick, here's my metaphor for the Colts draft, right? You're going to Disney World. You're super excited. It's going to be a great time. And then this big fat ass just accidentally spills like 40 ounces of Coke all over you as you're walking through the turnstile. And so you're drenched in like sticky soda, and you're like, oh, this is going to suck. And you're pissed off, and luckily, like, you get to change clothes, you wipe yourself off, you're good to go. And then you go on all the rides. All the rides are great. Fast pass takes no time, and like everything's great. Like, it kind of ruined the day that like you got spilled on, but the rest of the day was good enough where you're like, you know what? Okay. Seamless metaphor.
Yeah. Exactly. So let's get to the next pick that you guys had, and that's your second round pick. Julius Brents, the corner out of Kansas State. He's actually one of my favorite corners in this year's draft class. I think I might have had him right at number 9 or number 10, or like very close to being in my top 10. Like, he's one of my favorite corners. Big physical corner coming in at 6'3". He's a very excellent man coverage type of corner for you guys. I think he's going to bring a little bit of aggressiveness to that corner position. Yes, that aggressiveness had bit him a couple of times too. But I mean, Tad, I know I brought this up before and you weren't a fan of it, but he played against the Quentin Johnston in the Big 12 game against you guys, and he was able to lock him up a couple times. He was able to get an interception in the red zone, a very crucial drive for Kansas State to obviously keep the momentum on their side, as opposed to letting TCU sort of take over and sort of climb back into the game, right? So, I mean, this guy's going to bring a good, a good presence to the secondary, especially after the trade of Stephon Gilmore to the Dallas Cowboys. I think he's going to be an excellent replacement. I wouldn't say he's the best replacement, but he is a pretty good replacement that will grow into the position pretty well, become a very good starting caliber corner for you guys there in the second round. You get to the third round. This is another receiver that I absolutely love too. I thought he might have gone in the second round. You end up getting him at the number 3 in the third round at the number 79 pick. Is Josh Downs, the receiver out of North Carolina. Actually, he drew a lot of comparisons to running a wide receiver that went in the first round to the Baltimore Ravens at 22, Zay Flowers. Like, he shared a very similar skill set coming out of the slot, being very shifty. He brings a lot of good speed to the position as well. I think he just didn't have the same level of skill set that Zay Flowers brings as far as being a route technician, but I think that's a lot of things you can obviously correct at the next level, especially when your wide receiver coach is Reggie Wayne. Yes, you're going to deliver. You're going to.
I'm so Max. I had a story about this. That was going to be a quiz for you. Was who is the Colts receiving coach? Because apparently the Colts front office wasn't that sold on him. But it was the third round. He was still there, and Reggie Wayne was like in the war room, being like, right, we need to take this guy right. Like, he vouched for this guy hard, and the GM was like, okay. Chris Ballard was like, if we got an all-time Colt vouching for this guy, let's do it. And that's apparently how he ended up being an Indianapolis Colt. Because Downs himself, I actually, I don't think he was a bad prospect. I thought he was fine. Nothing about him really blew me away. But the fact that Reggie Wayne seemed this excited by him has me very excited, because now we have pretty good young core receivers in Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce. People forget about him because he got kind of buried in a bad Colt season, but Pierce showed some promise last year. So we got Alec Pierce, Michael Pittman, and Downs, if he works out, not terrible.
Yeah, honestly, you have your position set now where you got your, Michael Pittman on one side, you got Alec Pierce on the other side, then you got Josh Downs operating out of the slot. So you got a nice 3 receiver set there. And so, yeah, honestly, I like what I see there in Josh Downs. I think he's going to fit pretty well in that Indianapolis offense. Give another weapon to Anthony Richardson to hopefully find his footing quicker, right? So, I mean, that's just more optimism that you should have for Anthony Richardson, right? So, I'm going to get to the fourth round now. You got 2 picks in the fourth round, pretty close to each other. I picked 106 and then picking right away at 110. 2 of my favorite players in this draft class is Blake Freeland, the offensive tackle out of BYU. I thought he was going to go on day 2 as well, but he ended up slipping to you guys early on day 3. He's got a lot of promise. I'm not saying he's a perfect prospect by any means, but I think there's a lot of talent that you could build on that he could become a starter right away. Tad, obviously, the offensive line was sort of a weak point, surprisingly, for you guys
not even sort of. My God, the consistency in terms of health on the offensive line was atrocious. Not just last year, really for the past 2 years. Like, our offensive line health and consistency is so bad. So, like, anytime we get a guy with even a slight shimmer of promise on the O-line, hey, man, I'll take it.
Exactly. I think
basically if you're over 6'5" and over 300 pounds, come on, let's just join the roster.
I think they probably could have benefited from going interior offensive line as opposed to tackle, but I think you need the help on the offensive tackle position as well.
And don't forget the interior offensive line was not that deep this year.
Exactly. So it kind of makes a little bit of sense here, but I love Freeland there, getting him in the 4th round. And then 4 picks later, like I said, I had this guy pegged to go at the very end of the 1st round. I really love this guy. Added to me at Addison, the defensive tackle at Northwestern. The guy of his size, to have the speed that he has and the agility that he has, that is just sensational. You pair him up with I got to say it, former Niner DeForest Buckner on your defensive line. He's going to learn for the perfect guy that he's going to be able to pair up there. Now, there's a lot of talk. I think that's probably why he slipped in the 4th round. Is just, does he have a position? Because it's like Northwestern.
Is that what happened? I still never heard a reason why he slipped.
That's sort of what I'm sort of assuming here, because it's like you look at the tape. Northwestern, they lined him up at defensive tackle. There are times they lined him up at defensive end too. But it's like you look at the guy with the speed that he has. It's like, do you put him on the edge then to come off the edge to get the advantage of your tackles, or it's like because of the size that he has, do you put him at the defensive tackle position so you come up the interior? So I think in this case, the Colts can sort of do whatever they want. I think he has that positional flexibility. We'll have to see just how he's going to handle the upcoming offensive lineman that he's going to face at the next level, right? So maybe he's going to have to pick one, and sort of that's where he's sort of going to benefit more. But it's like the fact that he comes in with that flexibility to play either the interior defensive line or the exterior of the defensive line, that's just fantastic. Like I said, he's got sensational speed. He's got the good production as well. So the fact that you got him in the 4th round, like I said, I pegged him as a 1st rounder. At the very end, I thought Kansas City was going to take him. He ends up slipping to you guys at number 4. I was like, this is fantastic value for you guys. So I got a lot of promise for Addison out of Boire, out of Northwestern there. And then the last couple of guys I want to bring up, it's all of your 5th round picks. You guys had 4 5th round picks, and you guys got a lot of great ones here.
That was our Powerball round.
Exactly. So you got the first one to pick 138, got Darius Rush, the quarter out of South Carolina. I think he brings a lot of promise to that secondary position. May start as more of a depth piece there, but I think I see a lot of talent that he could eventually become a starter for you guys. Exactly. I talked about this. Daniel Scott, he's coming in as an older prospect, but a more polished prospect. And you already talked about it, that he's got one of the best range as far as being a cover safety in this year's draft class. And he's got some good tackling mechanics as far as being an in-the-box defender. I think there's a few times some of his read and recognition skills are not as strong as it probably could be, but I think there's a lot that you could work on that I think, once again, he could develop into a nice starter as well. It's just you worry because of that age, just, how long will he be a successful safety for you guys at the next level? But there's a lot to love about Daniel Scott. Getting to the next guy, Will Mallory, a tight end out of Miami.
This is an interesting pick.
I remember I was hearing a lot about Mallory during the whole process. I was like, I don't know about this guy. Like, is he really going to be compared? But what's the one thing, Tad, that we kept talking about in this year's draft class? The tight end is probably the deepest of all the classes this year. And you can see that here with Mallory going all the way to the 5th round. Like, he's a big physical tight end. He brings a really good receiving element to the tight end position as well. I know the Colts sort of go very athletic with their tight end position. We already talked about Kylan Granson and Jelani Woods and Mo Alley Cox, these big physical athletic freaks. And it's like Mallory sort of fits that sort of mold as well. He's not as big as those guys, but I think he probably has the better receiving hands compared to everybody else in that group. So I think he could earn some early playing time for the Colts, especially, like I said, where they're still trying to figure out that position, unfortunately. So I really like what I see with Will Mallory. And then the last guy, we talked about this guy at the Senior Bowl. He was breaking off some sensational runs. He looked like he was showing good patience, and that's the running back Evan Hull out of the University of Northwestern as well. So I think you pair him up with Jonathan Taylor. I think he's going to be a good 1-2 combination there. Maybe with the number 3 guy, because who's your number 2 guy right now behind Jonathan Taylor?
I'm trying to remember. It's funny you should say that. Who's the guy that we traded for from Buffalo? Zach Moss? It's currently Zach Moss.
Yeah, he's there. Yeah. So I think, we'll see what happens with Zach Moss. There's a reason I think Buffalo moved on from him, but
he was a voluntary benching a lot for Buffalo. It was
So we'll see whether he can find his play style. He can sort of fit in with Indianapolis, but I like what I see with Evan Hull there. I think he could fit in, be a nice complementary piece to Jonathan Taylor, the main bell cow for you guys' offense. So like I said, there's a lot of great picks that you guys have here that I think if everything works out, all of a sudden Indianapolis can be very competitive very quickly, as long as that big one, which I know you sort of got the question mark on.
It's the Coke spill all over you. As long
one.
as we can clean up the Coke, this will be a great rest of the draft class.
It's sort of the crux of this year's draft class. Is like if Richardson pans out, I think you guys can have a very successful 2023 draft class that other people will look back and be like, man, Colts nailed that. There's a reason they're so competitive now, sort of thing. So I love the Colts to draft this year.
I'll go very quickly through because it's just, hearing over the next 10 minutes. I love this pick. It's very boring. So Julius Brent, love that pick. The one bad thing about that pick is they kept showing the TCU interception every time they did that. I'm like, do you have to do this? It was like giving me very weird mixed feelings. But no, I agree.
Right? So they kind of
and like, well, it was funny because there were two players in the Big 12 championship that I walked away from that game going, those guys have pro potential. None of them were TCU players because at that point in the season in December, I'd already known all these TCU guys have pro potential. I didn't know most of them would be in LA, but I knew most of them would be in the pros. It was Julius Brent and Deuce Vaughn. Deuce Vaughn is the TCU killer, man. He killed us both times we played him. I'm so mad he's a Cowboy.
That would pain me a little bit.
Yeah.
I love the story with him going to
Oh, shut up about the story. I'm so sick of this story.
But that's the only thing I love about it. Otherwise, I hate it.
Hate that story. Partially because it is a great story. I'm
exactly.
Like, Dallas. So that was a great pick. The Northwestern guy, love that pick. I thought that was a great steal.
You're going to have to learn to say his name.
I'm just about to say the only bad thing is
going to have to learn it now.
I'm staying away from it. You absolutely nailed the analysis on Mallory. Is like he's very, and I usually hate this term when it comes to draft prospects. It's so cliche, but he's very raw. But all the athletic talent is there. Daniel Scott, I'm excited for. I had 3rd round grade on him, so getting him in the 5th round was great.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll disagree with me on this. Not defensive back, but I think Daniel Scott was probably the fastest safety in this year's class.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, there you go. Otherwise, exactly what you say. They nailed almost every single pick. When the biggest complaint, well, other than the obvious one, the biggest complaint of their draft is me going, who is this guy from Wagner in the 6th round? Yeah. That's very definition of nitpicking at that point. And by the way, the last time I said that about a Colts linebacker out of a small school, his name was Shaq Leonard. So it's like one of those things where like, all right, but if you wanted they got like a free pass to do that for the rest of their lives. Just like small school linebackers, go for it. Because I was pissed when we drafted Leonard in the 2nd round out of South Carolina State. I was like, what are we doing? I still think that was a little early, but still. So yeah, I just definite A draft grade for me. Well, no, I think to spoil the announcement, I think in my I gave him B+ just because of Anthony Richardson.
I thought we both gave him an A- if I remember correctly. But
okay,
yeah, obviously,
just a minus.
The way you'll find out is make sure you follow us
on
all of our social media handles. You'll see all those graphics pretty soon there. So, Dad, let's really quickly touch on some losers. We won't spend a ton of time on these, but just, who is one that unfortunately probably didn't have the best draft weekend?
This was weird, man, because this team got off to the best start. They probably had that's a good question. They definitely had one of my top 3 favorite 1st-round picks. Possibly my favorite. That's a debate for later. But the New England Patriots, really with the first 2 picks, I was like, oh, damn, they are on a path to a pretty successful draft here. And then I don't know what they started doing. So in the 1st round, as I said before, they got Christian Gonzalez at number 17 after trading down with the Steelers. The cornerback at Oregon, for those of you who don't know. Oh my God. Like, that's not fair. He was my top rated corner. You and I were having this debate of who's better, him or Witherspoon. Witherspoon goes up 5, and Gonzalez, for reasons I didn't know. I was hearing rumors about this leading up to draft day, slipped, and I think the Patriots got absolute steal here. I made this comparison, not in terms of play style, but in terms of what happened to them on draft night, to Derwin James. Whereas this really talented defensive back slipping for stupid reasons, and they end up making every other team regret it. And I think that comparison works out quite well because Derwin James went in the late teens as well to the Los Angeles Chargers. So I thought that was a great pick. Keon White, the defensive end at Georgia Tech, was their 2nd-round pick. I didn't love it, but like I understood, like, okay, you want to add more pass rushers. I'll never say that's a bad thing. I'm not the biggest fan of White. Nothing about his tape really blew me away, but also looking at the available pass rushers at that point in the 2nd round, there really was no one better. So I was like, okay, not a bad pick, but a solid pick. I get it. Then they started getting weird. So this is a guy I really, really liked coming out of the Senior Bowl. I still really like him, just not this early. It was Marte Mapu, the safety / linebacker / corner / quarterback / running back / receiver. And in case you think I'm joking, no, he actually did play all those positions at one time at Sacramento State. So this dude is obviously a freak athlete. I really like him. I don't understand why you're taking him in the third round. Trent Simpson was still on the board. I believe Drew Sanders potentially was still on the board at that point. But bottom line is I had like at least 4 inside linebackers ranked above Mapu. I get the athleticism is very tempting, but I really don't think anybody else is going to take him in the third round. You could wait at least another round there. So not a terrible pick, but also I felt a little knee jerky to me. This is where things start getting weird in the 4th round. So they took Jake Andrew, the center out of Troy. Would love to tell you more on him. I will openly admit, did not watch any of his tape, could not comment on him. Sorry, Amir. So also in the 4th round, they took Chad Ryland, who is the Maryland kicker. Stop drafting kickers. Stop it. Like every time I feel like a nun in a Christian school, like I just want to slap these GM hands with a ruler and be like, stop it. No, don't you do it. Don't you reach in that, I know the candy bowl full of kickers. Don't you reach in that candy bowl. You can find somebody, just invite like 15 undrafted rookies in. You're going to find one that can do exactly what Jake Moody does or exactly what Chad Ryland does.
And I
especially
think
in the 4th round. Now, you want to do it. Hold on. You want to do it in the 6th or 7th round? Fine. I think I can somewhat justify that. But God damn it, stop doing it before the 5th round, people. They're not that valuable. We saw it in Aguayo before anybody's like, whoa, what if a kicker is like the most perfect kicker in college football? That was Robert Aguayo, and we all saw how that worked out.
I think the big thing that sort of like made me puzzle this pick too specifically is that, yes, you shouldn't be drafting a kicker earlier than the 5th round, I think in my book personally, but I think I saw this with New England a couple seasons ago. They took Justin Rohrwasser, I believe in the 4th round, if I remember correctly, and he didn't even start for them his rookie season. Like that's how bad that pick ended up being. So it's like, you think they would have learned from their past transgressions as far as taking a kicker this early, but yet here they are. They took Chad Ryland out of Maryland. So, I mean, hopefully this works out for them, but I mean, we will see.
So in the 4th round, then they took, and I really apologize if I'm mispronouncing your last name, City So, the Eastern Michigan guard. 5th round, they took Antonio Mafi, the guard at UCLA. This pick I actually did I thought this was a fair risk at this point. In the 6th round, they took Keyshawn Butte, the receiver out of LSU, who at one point people were projecting as late 1st rounder. So,
yeah,
talk about
I was very
surprised
with that one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then they took yet another receiver in the 6th round, Demario Douglas, the receiver out of Liberty. And finally, they finished it off with one of the more fitting names for a cornerback, Amir Speed out of Michigan State, to close out their draft in the 6th round. So, I mean, it's hard to justify a lot of these picks. Like, you want to shore up that offensive line. Okay, I get it. That makes sense because you were pretty thin there. I even said that before the draft. Look out for the Patriots targeting offensive line. Why they target that offensive lineman? Like that, I kept asking myself that again and again. Like I was looking at my big board and I was like, what in the world? I know like big boards obviously differ, but again, I know this sounds very conceited to be like, well, I've never heard of these people, so naturally it can't be good. But also look at the Patriots, as you touched on, look at the Patriots draft history over the last like 4 or 5 years. It really hasn't been that good. They usually hit on like 1 or 2 prospects, which is fine, but you really, really need to succeed elsewhere or like really, really hit on those 1 or 2 picks. And right now they're just like, oh yeah, that guy's a solid starter. Like that's basically all they're getting out of their draft now. So I think the Patriots just got too up their own ass, to be totally frank about it. It's like, I think they think they're smarter than everybody else and they reach for these guys, think like, we'll show them. We can make this guy into a starter and everybody's going to laugh at us. You've been trying that for the past 3 years and now you're stuck Mac Jones versus Bailey Zappi as your quarterback battle. Like, I feel better about Anthony Richardson than I do either one of those guys. And our listeners know what extreme comment that is. So overall, it's just like, I understood their strategy. I just don't think they went about it in the right way.
Yeah, the Patriots tend to zig when everybody else is zagging. So, I mean, that's
I feel like they do it just for the sake of zigging.
And maybe it is. And that's exactly what they're sort of doing. And just like, yeah, like you said, I think the past couple of years is just we haven't seen it be as successful as it might have worked in previous years. And so it's just like, you wonder, does there need to be a change at the front office as far as like who's making these picks? Because I mean, I think since Caserio left, I'm wondering if Bill Belichick is taking on more of that responsibility as far as being the GM. And we've talked about this on this podcast before, Ted, that part of the reasons that why he struggled in Cleveland is because he had both the role as a head coach and GM, and that sort of led to him not being as successful in Cleveland that a lot of people thought he would be. Then he came to New England and he sort of separated the two. He was just the head coach. They had different guys. Scott Pioli obviously was there for a while. Then obviously they got Kazarian. They had a few other guys too. David Ziegler, I think, was there for a little bit, right? And that was successful. But now I'm wondering if just like sort of that is starting to blend into his own position now again, where he's doing both the front office stuff as well as the coaching stuff. And maybe that's the thing that's causing issues. So, I mean, I don't know, but yeah, clearly it's just like you look at the Patriots draft class. I think, like you said, like Keon White, Christian Gonzalez, excellent picks there. Let's see if it pans out for them. I really like Christian Gonzalez there. The fact they slid all the way there. Keon White was talked about being possibly a first-round pick too. Like that was how high some people rated him, but obviously he slipped into the second though. So I got good promise for those guys, but everybody else is just like, yeah, a big question mark. I'm just not sure if they'll pan out for the Patriots. So yeah, I'd probably say it's like, I don't hate the draft class. I question a lot of the picks a lot more. I think so.
If you told me that Bill Belichick's dog actually drafted again for the team in day 3, I would absolutely 100% believe you. Like, oh, this is like an Airbud situation.
I got you. I would have loved another shot of Nike.
I mean, it's exactly like an Airbud situation. Like people have been calling up Goodell, like they can't do that. Well, show me the rule where it says they can't be drafted by a dog.
That was one of my favorite parts of the pandemic draft, where it's just like they cut to the name tag Bill Belichick and it's just his dog looking at the computer, just like, this is fantastic.
Actually, to take a quick side note, I know we're kind of running up against time here. Were there any like viral meme moments that I just missed from the draft since we're doing live cast? I didn't really see anything on Twitter, or this felt very meme, light of a year for the draft.
I think it was pretty chill. One of the big things that I kept seeing was that obviously there's the, we brought this up during the live stream as well, the obligatory shot of Will Levis every single time that his name wasn't called. And a lot of people started to bring up that just like he had a very large female entourage that was changing quite a bit. And so they were like, man, what sort of riz does Will Levis have right now? Because he had like so many different women around him every single time there's a camera shot to him. So they're just like, what is going on there? But he must be living life pretty well, even if he gets drafted in the second round. So I saw that quite a bit later on after the draft. But otherwise, like as I was watching it, because we're obviously watching it as we were doing the live stream, I don't think there's anything that was that
no one jumping in the pool, no girlfriends getting like, well, there was one girlfriend that got like shoved out of the way, but I think that was a clip I saw from like 2 years ago that just got recycled. Now on the Will Levis thing real quick, I feel comfortable saying this because this has been pretty widely reported on. I actually have a source that told me that Will Levis was very, very upset, both with his agent and with the NFL, that he went to New York and did not go in the first round. And he was given the option of, do you want to come back for day 2 or do you want to just, go do your own thing? And he apparently was absolutely like, no, screw you. I'm not going back. How dare you? And so that was, whoo. And, honestly, though, that kind of follows up with the rumors that he doesn't really interview well. If that's the kind of attitude I'm getting out of my quarterback, it's literally Draft Day in the movie where the quarterback, what's his name? Bo Callahan,
Bo Callahan, yep.
Busts out the door, and P. Diddy, who for some reason is his agent, is like, get back in there.
Yeah.
Why was P. Diddy his agent?
I don't know. Maybe they're trying to play up to like whole Jay-Z with his Rock Nation. Now he has an agency group, so maybe this is like their play at that. Like, I don't know.
That's not even the weirdest part of the movie. The weirdest part of the movie was trying to play Terry Crews off as Arian Foster's dad.
Yeah, no.
That was so weird.
It is what it is.
Look up the age difference on that.
So I'm going to get to my loser pick here. And unfortunately, it's, a team that they sort of needed this draft to sort of stay in contention with the rest of their division that got marketably really a lot better with their draft classes that they had. And that's the Washington Commanders. So, I mean, just running down the picks that they had this year, they only had the 7 picks. In the first round, they went with Emmanuel Forbes, the cornerback out of Mississippi State at pick 16. Round 2, pick 47, they took my favorite safety, Jartavius Martin, the safety out of Illinois. In round 3, they had number 97. They took Ricky Stromberg, the center out of Arkansas. Pick 4, pick 118. Round 4, pick 118, excuse me. They took Braden Daniels, offensive tackle out of Utah. Round 5, pick 137. They took KJ Henry, the defensive end out of Clemson. Round 6, pick 193, Chris Rodriguez Jr., the running back out of Kentucky. And they closed out in round 7, pick 233, Andre Jones Jr., the defensive end out of the University of Louisiana. So let's start with that first one. I mean, Tad, you already brought this up. Christian Gonzalez slid all the way to the New England Patriots, number 17 there.
You were getting me confused. Like, is it slid?
I know.
Slid?
It's slid.
Slid?
So he slid all the way to the New England Patriots at number 17 because the Washington Commanders at number 16 decided to go with Emmanuel Forbes instead of Christian Gonzalez. And I think that's just sort of the running thing that we talked about during the live stream too. It's just like with Christian Gonzalez still on the board, I'm surprised they went in this direction. Now, I will say Emmanuel Forbes did have first round talent. I'm not saying that he's not worth a first round 100%. Pick. I just think that at 16, maybe it's a little bit higher because, I mean, it's like you look at the skill set. He's got great, defensive intelligence where it's like, he's pretty aggressive at the right times. I think that's the biggest thing. He got a lot of pick sixes at Mississippi State. A couple of them on Will Levis, if I remember correctly. So, I mean, this guy definitely has the talent, but I mean, he's a bit of a smaller framed guy. So, I mean, he's definitely a liability in the run game. You wonder if he can handle a rigorous 17-game schedule, potentially a playoff schedule on top of that as well. So, just like, as your first, as your round one pick, that's what I was sort of going. I was going to say first overall pick again, just sort of that's in my mind there, but just first
it's the team's first overall pick.
Exactly, the team's first overall pick. That's the best way to put it there. So as the team's first round pick at pick 16, right in the middle of the draft, I'm surprised they went in this direction. I thought they'd go with sort of like, everybody, a lot of people had him just like you, Christian Gonzalez being their number one ranked defensive back in this year's draft class. And I mean, it's just like, I'm surprised that you go with an Emmanuel Forbes that's probably ranked a little bit lower on a lot of people's draft boards, but maybe they see something that, we obviously don't see, that he can translate into a better corner compared to Christian Gonzalez. I really have no idea, but just, I found that very surprising. I thought Christian Gonzalez would have been the better fit there, especially if you're looking for that prototypical corner that you want to start there at your, prime position there on the corner there. So honestly, I'm just going to start there. It was very surprising because it's just like, was he the right pick? I don't know.
For me, it has to be a system thing where unquestionably, and I think one of the reasons Christian Gonzalez did fall, he's not the most physical of corners. He's much more the kind of sly, like kind of athletic corner. Forbes is, in my opinion, the best press corner in this year's draft. Well, maybe Joey Porter. It was between Porter or Forbes. So that's the one thing I can, justify it with is Forbes going before Gonzalez was that had to be a system thing. That's the only thing I can think of. This reminds me a lot of, and you got to help me out here. I can't with me blinking on these obvious names. Not Hakeem. Who was the guy that went right before Jordan in the NBA draft? Because there were the top three. It was Hakeem, guy who went number 2, and then Jordan, right? I got that right.
Yeah. I blanking on that number 2 guy too, but yeah.
All right. Well, while I look it up, basically that guy, while I was growing up, I was always just like, okay, like that really sucks. This is a Ryan Lee, Peyton Manning situation. And I was shocked when I actually started getting into basketball, which I know people are like, you're into basketball, but you don't know this guy's name. It's very late at night. Give me a break. He actually had a fairly solid NBA career. And it was one of those things where he just gets too much hate because who was on the board at the time. And that is exactly what you said is my fear with Emmanuel Forbes is, yes, I think he could really do well in the NFL. And yes, I think that was a totally fair first round pick, but it's just the fact that, frankly, a better player was on the board may be the thing that Sam Bowie, damn it.
Sam Bowie, yeah. You did have a pretty good career. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Emmanuel Forbes might be the same scenario where he has a very good NFL career, but Christian Gonzalez is going to be the player I expect him to be, and he will forever be in that shadow, which is just not fair to him. But, watching it, even if he's not a system fit, then coach him to be. That's just, I don't really understand that.
Yeah, so getting to their pick in the second round, they took Jartavius Martin. Like I said, my favorite safety, and, I can sort of understand why he went in the second round here, but just I think once again, I think this is my big question mark with Washington. It's just like, I think they could have addressed stronger position of needs compared to safety because they have Cameron Curl. They also have Derek Forrest, who were pretty good safeties for them last year. So it's like, did they need to go safety? And I know Jartavius Martin sort of like I talked about this before. He sort of played that five-star technique at the University of Illinois. So they put him in the box a little bit of the time. They put him at the slot corner. They played him at safety. So it's like, he's got that versatility, but just like, I don't think they needed to waste it, not waste, but just like, I don't think they needed to use the second round pick on Jartavius Martin. They could have gone addressing their offensive line at the time, at the time when they picked in the second round. They could have taken Osiris Torrance to upgrade the interior offensive line. They could have taken John Michael Schmitz to upgrade their center position as well, because, after the draft, they released Chase Roulier, who was their starting center. Yep. So it's like, now you look at that, it's like, well, okay, you could have upgraded the center and then released him. It would have made a lot more sense. So it's just like, I'm surprised that they decided to go with Martin. I think he's going to be a good fit for them, but just like, yeah, I think position of need, they could have addressed somewhere else. So I'm surprised they went back-to-back secondary there. Then they went into the next round. They addressed offensive line with Ricky Stromberg and then Braden Daniels. Braden Daniels is actually my favorite pick of their draft class. I think he's got a lot of potential. He could play the tackle position. He could also play the interior offensive line position as well. So, I mean, we'll see where Washington will use him, just how he develops and how he could sort of, plant himself as far as one of those positions of need for them, or maybe he'll sort of be a swing offensive lineman for them, playing either position for them, depending on where they sort of need a fill there. So Ricky Stromberg is the center that they end up drafting, obviously, in the third round there. So, I mean, yeah, I like the promise that he brings, but just I think you could have gotten a better center prospect than in the second round if you're looking to draft a center, right? But I like what Stromberg brings, but just, yeah, once again, it's just like the questioning about where they sort of address their needs was just a little bit interesting there. Also, then you have to look at the fact that they're clearly rolling with Sam Howell because they didn't draft the quarterback the entire draft. So it's like, even as a backup guy, like you said, Minnesota, they took Jaron Hall all the way in the 6th round or 7th round. I can't remember exactly there, but just 6th round. There you go. So they obviously like, okay, we need to address this position because what happens if Kirk Cousins gets hurt? They don't want to fall into a San Francisco situation where it's like, okay, Cousins is hurt. Now Kellen Mond is hurt. Now what do we do? It's like, so they want to make sure that they have that insurance. So here it's like, clearly they're going with Sam Howell. They obviously signed Jacoby Brissett in the offseason. So they're going with those two guys. So it's like, yeah, we don't need to draft a quarterback this year. So that was a little bit questionable. And then also the fact that, like I said, the rest of the division drafted a lot better. Like, I mean, we already talked about Philadelphia.
Good.
The Giants drafted really well with Jalen Hyatt and some of the other guys that they drafted as well, right? Then you look at the Cowboys, who we already talked about. They took Deuce Vaughn, Mozzie Smith. Like, I mean, they got a lot of great players as well. So it's like, one thing too, Tad, all three of those teams were in the playoffs last year. And so the fact that Washington could not sort of have a successful draft, at least on paper, we'll see how this all plays out, obviously, but just I don't think they sort of addressed the positions of needs as well as they could. Very similar to New England. I think some of the picks that they made were a little bit questionable as well as far as like where they took them. And then 3, just the biggest thing is just that while the rest of the division addressed their needs a lot better and this draft class sort of made them a lot better heading into the 2023 season, Washington did not take that approach. And so they're going to be basement dwellers again in the NFC East, unfortunately, like just based off what I'm seeing off this draft and what they did in the offseason as well as far as free agency too. So it's just like, yeah, unfortunately, they're losers for me.
Yeah, Washington's one of those really weird drafts for me this year because I actually like most of the players they drafted.
It's true. I felt the same way.
I just don't like them in Washington. Like, it's just like
that's the tough thing. Yeah, that's
like if it was another team making this draft where exactly like what you said, where these were all like massive needs, I would be giving this like an A. Like they drafted a lot of good talent there. So maybe they were just going best available because they kind of recognized like, okay, this is kind of a wash of a year anyways. So maybe they just went best available. Maybe that's what happened.
Very possible.
But yeah, overall, I really wasn't a fan of really any of the picks they made. I was really upset with the Chris Rodriguez pick because that guy has a lot of immediate impact potential, and that dude is going to get buried.
Apparently, he was a huge favorite of Ron Rivera, so that's why he was selected there in the 6th round.
So I have to imagine
his playing time, like you said.
Well, I have to imagine that means Antonio Gibson, enjoy your last year in Washington. Like that's the only thing that makes sense to me.
It's very possible.
So, and honestly, maybe Ron Rivera, you too, buddy. Like you or that will be an episode this summer. Is coaches on the hot seat, and Rivera is going to be on one.
I think he'll be at the top of that list for sure.
Yeah,
he'll be at the top of that list.
Especially after this draft, because again, like you said, like I really like Chris Rodriguez as a player, but you already have Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson. Like if you want to like draft a replacement for Gibson, great, but then wait until next year when it's more of an immediate need. Like address your needs right now. You're not the Eagles where you have the benefit of taking luxury picks like that, or you're not the Chiefs, especially the Chiefs barely had that benefit. So it's I don't know. It was just a very very odd draft, and Washington's got Washington.
Like I said, I think it just in that division, like I said, I mean, I hate to keep hitting the same note here, but just like the rest of the division drafted so well. And the fact that your draft was just like, yeah, so, it sort of just spells as far as like what Washington is doing. And it's just like, yeah, there's a reason why they're just unfortunately not competitive year to year. And so far, like you said, I think it's just Ron Rivera could very much be on the hot seat, potentially fired as we head into the 2024 season. But yeah, unfortunately, this just did not instill any sort of confidence that Washington's going to be competitive this year. I mean, we'll see. We will see. But those are our draft winners and losers from the 2023 NFL Draft. Like we talked about, we're going to be releasing draft winners and losers for all divisions and all teams. So, I mean, make sure you're tuning in to our social media handles. What you see is coming down below, right as I sort of said there. You can follow us on Twitter. You got me at @OverTheSide23. You got Tad at TadTheSide94. Got the show handle at The Decide Guys. And, of course, we're on Instagram at The Decide Guys as well. Wherever you listen to your podcast, make sure you subscribe so you're always up to date with all of our latest episodes. We've sort of been at a little bit of a weirder schedule the past couple of weeks, so the best way you can be informed about when those episodes are dropping, subscribe, and you'll always get the alert there. And of course, if you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube. We obviously would love to see you, and I'll get all their interactions on the video. But yeah, if you got time, obviously listen on podcasts. But make sure you're subscribing to the LAFB Network's YouTube channel as well. Lots of great content when they're covering the Rams and the Chargers post-draft coverage. And of course, we're sort of getting into that season, Tad, with spring games and like talking about the prospects and everything with both the Trojans and the Bruins. So that's going to be here. The college football season is going to be here sooner than you think as well. So they got a lot of great coverage there as well. Okay, yeah, we'll bring up TCU, though they're not on the West Coast. Well,
we are bringing up TCU a lot from now on. Yeah,
with the Rams, they're kind of on the West Coast now.
Fort Worth, baby.
So the Rams and the Chargers did address a lot of picks with TCU players for sure. So maybe it is TCU West. I think you brought that up in the Slack before there. But yeah, make sure you're tuning in for all the great coverage they got there for all the LA sports teams, both the pros and the college ranks. But guys, to everybody who's been watching the YouTube videos, subscribing and listening to our podcast, interacting with us on social media, I mean, guys, we really just can't be where we are today with all your support, and we can't thank you enough.
And if you're wondering, like, I thought you guys used to be the fantasy football guys. Hey, we are about to return back to fantasy football sooner than you may think. So like Amir said, subscribe, keep an eye out for those alerts because we are going to start dipping our toes back into that. Now that the NFL landscape, for the most part, is pretty settled, we can finally start getting, viewpoint on the best sleepers, best, overrated, not best, but most overrated players, everything like that. So we got a lot of fantasy stuff headed your way over the next couple of weeks, over the next couple of months. So keep your eye out for that. If you are not a very loyal listener and this is your first time, first off, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Second off, if you're like, why the hell did Tad do a terrible Jar Jar Binks impression in the middle of that episode? Well, it's because we did, as Amir said at the beginning of the episode, a Star Wars themed episode last week. And with the offseason now upon us, we are going to do a lot more fun stuff like that. So if you have any ideas, anything you'd like to see, I'm not going to promise we'll make it to air, but I promise you we will consider it because at least I'm very lazy and any ideas fed to me takes more work off my plate. So as always, everyone, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching, and please stay safe.